G'day. Today we're doing a repair on a VZ Commodore, and it's got the V6 motor, 2007 model. And what's happening, there's a bit of a catch up when you go from reverse to drive. You can actually feel there's something catching up. So I believe it's either bushes or maybe even tailshaft. We're just going to have a look underneath. So if we have a look, this centre bearing's actually worn out. A bit hard to see. You can see the rubber on top of that centre bearing cushion is actually perished. But what happens when he selects drive to reverse or reverse to drive, because of the rotation of the tail shaft, this will either hop up or push down. So it feels like it's sort of catching up to engage the gears. Easy replacement. The universal joint's okay on this. So it's a good idea to just mark where the tail shaft was. Eliminates the possibility of vibration down the track. Also make sure you check these coupling rubbers, make sure they're not perished or damaged or anything like that. And we're not going to take off all the bolts, just the nut and bolt ones, 18mm and 19mm. You can leave these here, leave the rubber on there if it's okay. If you're replacing it, then of course you're going to have to take these off. And the centre bearing bolts are 13mm. At the front here, we're just going to slide the whole thing out with the yoke, and that rubber coupling looks okay as well. Now, sometimes you might need a little pry bar just to get past that rubber there, and the rubber will flex just so you can pop that tail shaft off that little pin there, or that guide. Make sure that's nice and clean before you put it back as well. The idea is there's a set of splines here, and there's actually just a C-clip on the inside on the splines. You can confirm that by seeing that there's no C-clip over here. On some tail shafts they have a nut there that you have to undo. You have to remove the whole universal joint in most cases to get access to that nut. But what you need to do is basically being careful not to damage anything, especially the actual shaft. Put it in your vise, and then using a mallet, something that's a little bit heavier, you can just tap that tail shaft off. Just give it a tap and it'll pop out. Now again, good idea to just give it a mark it with a bit of liquid paper or some paint, just so you know where it was splined in, just in case this whole thing's been balanced. And there you can see that little spring steel clip that just holds it in place just so it doesn't wriggle around when it's on the splines. Now we've got our bearing puller there in the vise, and just with a bronze drift just tap it out. A little bit hard to come off because it's bouncing on the rubber there. Nearly there. There we go. You can't usually put it in the wrong way anyway, but just always a good idea to take a note of which side's the front, towards the front, and what's towards the rear. And you can see that that rubber's all, the top half of it was all chewed out. Okay, I've got the new one there. Always a good idea to do a comparison. Make sure they look the same. The only thing is this one's buggered and that one's new. That's the only difference. And smear a little bit of oil on there. And when you tap it in, you want to make sure you don't damage the bearing. Tap on the inside of the bearing there. Or if you've got a sleeve, good idea to use a sleeve. Okay. When it's all the way in, it's a good idea to just tap, make sure it's tapped right down with a punch there, and you'll actually feel or hear the sounds a little bit different when it bottoms right out. And now remembering where we lined up, well, marked it, where the splines go. It's resting on the uni joint, which is on this part of that yoke. And then we can just tap that other half onto that. If you don't have that, you can put a block of wood underneath there, but the risk that you're doing if you do it that way is damaging the universal joint. Now it will tap on a little bit difficult because that rubber's there. If you could hit it on the hard part, it would go in a lot easier. You can see we're nearly in all the way there now. There we go, all the way in. You'll actually feel when it's gone in all the way, it just sounds different, and you'll feel the solidness there when you tap it in. There we go, now it's just a matter of putting it back in the vehicle. Hang on, go back a little bit. You've got to lift it up. Back a bit, in a bit, that's it. You can see that rubber will flex enough just to get it back over that. And it's always a good idea to tighten up this first before you bolt the centre bearing. Otherwise that centre bearing might be pulling to one side more. It'll just run a lot better if you do the ends up first and then do the middle centre bearing up. Alright, all nice and tight. We've done up the two bolts there last. You can see the new centre bearing rubber there. Job's all done. Anyway, I hope that's helped. Don't forget to throw me a beer if I've helped in any way. Thank you for watching.